and I'm a board member of Summit. We are here, as advertised, as women in Medtech, with looking at power, presence, and the boardroom. I've brought it to another level, a lower level, and I've said women on boards. We're talking access, we're talking voice, and we're talking influence in Medtech. Nomti, your next slide. Okay, I have to go through these disclaimers, and that's a Summit story that I hear all the time, so pardon me for that. You can read what it says, it's recorded. We are not conflicting with the competition law and declarations of interest. I have none here, except that I am a member of Summit. So we can proceed next, Nomti. There are the don'ts and do's and don'ts. The main thing is that we should not contravene the competition law because we are suppliers and it's an industry associations. We are together talking. We shouldn't seem to be contravening the laws. Nomti, do you have another slide? Okay, so this is where we start. I have already said who I am. I have 3 phenomenal women that are joining me and that are going to be sharing their pearls of wisdom with us. But before I get there, let me make my remarks, opening remarks. I would be amiss not to wish all the women here a happy belated International Women's Day, because we have to celebrate ourselves. It's really encouraging to see so many people, women. I'm hoping there's a man around here, 1 or 2. I can't tell if we have a man or not, but I would assume that men can't just desert us. So many of you here joining this conversation today. This is an industry, that's a medtech industry, where women already lead. They lead in science, they lead in regulation, they lead in clinical care, quality, market access, and operations. Yet, that depth of expertise is still not consistently reflected at board level. In South Africa, the debate has moved from whether women belong in the boardroom. The more practical and more urgent questions many women are asking now are, how do I position myself for a board role? Who needs to see me as board ready? And once I'm there, how do I find my voice and influence decisions with confidence? Many women in medtech are not almost ready for boards. They are already ready. What's often missing is visibility, sponsorship, and the confidence to say, I belong here. And for those who do secure a seat, the challenge often shifts quickly from getting on the board to being heard in the room. As one South African female board member put it, I spent years preparing to be appointed to a board. No one prepared me for how intentional I would need to be about using my voice once I was there. Today's conversation is about both sides of the journey, access and influence. It is also a direct call to action for chairs and nomination committees, including those represented here, and influencing board appointments. This is a call to look beyond familiar names and informal networks. Recognize board readiness that comes from deep sector, regulatory, and risk expertise. Actively sponsor women into their first board roles and create boardroom cultures where new voices are invited early, not tested silently. And finally, a word of empowerment to the women in this webinar. You do not need to wait to be perfect, to know everything, or to be asked 3 times before you put your hand up. Boards need your perspective now. Your experience in Medtech is not peripheral to governance. It is central to it. Finding your voice in the boardroom is not about being our loudest person at the table, but about being prepared, intentional, and confident enough to speak when it matters. Over the next minutes, about 1.5 hours, our panelists will share practical, honest insights about how they navigated access to boards, how they learned to use their voice, and what they would do differently with hindsight. My hope is that you leave today not only inspired, but clearer and bolder. Clearer about how to position yourself for board roles, and bolder about the value you bring once you are there. With that, let's begin the conversation. I'm going to ask my panelists to introduce themselves briefly. I ask that they introduce themselves because if they ask them to submit their resume or whatever, it takes long. They know that we have a time constraint. So I'm going to start with Delia Ndlovu. Delia, please go ahead and tell us who you are.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Delia Ndlovu. I'm a mother and a wife. I've got 2 adults, and I am currently the Export Credit Insurance Corporations of South Africa Independent Chair. I serve with under the leadership of Sybil Siyoka at PPS, and I also am on Oasis Crescent Asset Management Company. So those are the companies that I'm on the chair of, and I do a whole lot of NGO work. My passion and purpose, I believe, is empowering women, as Sybil was saying earlier, to find their voice. I have a strong affinity to Summit because when I was chair of Deloitte, I worked with Tanya Vogt, as well as Peter Mehlape, who was the previous chair of Summit. They were the first ones to put their hands up to say, let's do a women empowerment index. I'm really, really proud of the work that we did together. So I'll stop there just to say I am really very proud of Summit being the first out of the starting blocks to help We Corner, which is a women empowerment group of government, to form this Women Empowerment Index. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Delia. Next, I'm going to move to Judith Chinkumbi. Judith.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Judith Chinkumbi, and I have the privilege of working at PPS. I'm currently the Deputy Group Company Secretary. I've spent most of my working career in governance type roles. And I find that quite a privilege because I've learned quite a lot. I've also had the privilege of serving on a number of boards, most of them in the development space. I'm very passionate about governance matters because I think that they are the driving force for good outcomes in industry and business and economic growth, et cetera, et cetera. The biggest privilege of my life is to be a mother of 2 girls. So so looking forward to this conversation, and I'll end there. Thanks.
Thanks, Judith. Then I come to Tracy, my fellow Summit board member.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tracy Winsami. I sit on the board of SAMED. I chair the diversity forum. I also work for a manufacturer based in Pinetown. I have had worked for this manufacturer for 28 years. My purpose is to leave it better than I found it. And my passion lies with empowerment through manufacturing. I'm a believer in the social compact. So we'll be able to change the social compact if we make more in South Africa. So and that is the reason I stay at a manufacturer. Sybil, you mentioned about men in the room. I have to plug. I have my sponsor and mentor in the room, so I'm very happy that I know we have at least one male. Maybe the other ones can identify themselves.
Great. It's great to hear that. Tracy, the one thing that is missing, you didn't say what you do at the company that you work at.
So I've recently, I've been a member of the BioEnvirotech board since 2016. And recently, like the ink is not dry yet, I've recently been appointed as general manager of the BioEnvirotech division of BioGroup.
Yeah. As you can see, I'm in trouble here because Tracy is my chairman at the committee, and then I have two people that sit on boards that I chair. So what I say here, they may just say, that's not what she's practicing, but I'm hoping that I'm not going to say something that is not true. Without wasting the time, then I have questions for my panelists, and I'm just going to ask each one of them questions, and then they can guide us in this discussion. I'll start with Delia. It's alphabetical. I see that DJT. So Delia, I'll start with you. In your opinion, you've traveled this journey of boards, and you've got wide experience, including outside of the country, which you didn't mention. How can women position themselves strategically, not just professionally, to be visible for board opportunities?
I'm trying to find my mute button. Thank you for that question. Yes, I have had the privilege to be on a board at Deloitte Africa locally and globally. So that was a huge honor. I think where I started with boards, and I think, I'm talking to my own experience, is with NGO boards. I found that, you get to practice a lot. You can make a lot of mistakes, and I wasn't paid for it. So I was prepared to do work on a volunteer basis so that I can sit there and learn. But what helped a lot more than just doing the practice on a volunteer basis was, having sponsors, having coaches. I went for coaching, and having mentors that impart their knowledge. People like Futhi Mtoba, who was already Deloitte Africa chair, Jean Cooper, who was my coach and also my boss at the time, she kept saying to me, you can be like Futhi. And I was like, what is she talking about? Little old me from the dusty streets of Soweto, how can I be a Futhi Mtoba? And she kept telling me, you can be what you put your mind on. So I then started taking this coaching that she was giving me very seriously and actually believing that this is possible. And then we started together planning as my coach, speaking to Futhi, telling her my aspirations that I want to be on boards. I didn't shy away from the ambition to say one day I want to be like you, Futhi. Then what she then did, she started being my sponsor and speaking on my behalf in rooms that I couldn't be in. And when there was an opportunity for me to represent her in certain rooms and she couldn't make it, like going to parliament and things like that, she would deliberately say, I'm not available, you go. You said you want to be where I am. And most importantly, allies. Allies are the main. I loved the fact that you started with the men and said, I hope they're here. They push from behind. A lot of my mentors have been men. Trevor Brown, the previous Deloitte chair, my predecessor at Deloitte, white male, very interested in women empowerment. Peter Mehlape, who I mentioned, your previous board chair, whenever I spoke about women issues, he said, I want to champion whatever you're championing and I will fight with you in the trenches. He was our masterclass teacher last Saturday at Women on Boards that Judith and I started, and he was phenomenal. He's got a chapter in his book about this Women Empowerment Index that we did together with Summit and Tanya. So I'm really proud of the allies that, rise together with us as women. So that's what I would advise women to do. Find your sponsor, find your mentor, find your coach. And going to coaching doesn't mean you are broken and you need to be fixed. It is just to help you with strategic thinking, with governance thinking, and how to ask those exploratory questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Delia, for those nuggets of wisdom. I'm hoping that ladies here are taking notes, because this is not just going to be sitting and listening. When you leave here, you must action at least one of the things that has been said in this room. I'm going to move to Judith. Judith, as she said, she's been on the governance side most of the time, although she's served on other boards. So, Judith, can you demystify the board appointment process? How do appointments really happen? Through networks, formal searches, reputation? What? Talk to us.
Thank you for that question, Dr. Sioka. So I think board appointments happen in a number of ways, and none of them can be selected to be the ultimate. But I think before I get to that, what is important is, and I think just building on to what Dile said, is getting prepared as a board member, because it doesn't help a person to get appointed when they're not prepared. They haven't grounded themselves in the right things. For example, understanding the fiduciary duties of an organization, understanding mandates, understanding separation of duties between management and the board, etc. So one needs to be very deliberate and build that knowledge, technical knowledge, experiential knowledge, speak to people who've been on board so that they can give you a good sense of what it actually means, because a lot of people have got these misconceptions. And then having said that, I think being appointed on a board definitely is linked to the networks. I think one needs to become visible. I think one needs to really, and I think talking about the competence, if you're a finance person, for example, you need to start being visible and joining organizations that advance certain things. For example, when IFRS came into play, there was a lot of, training and technical demystifying of what that means, what it's going to take for boards to be effective in that journey. So it's a combination of things that one needs to do. It's networking, definitely. It's getting ready to apply your area of expertise, because boards need specific skills. So don't be a jack of all trades. Hone into what you're specialized about, what you're competent in, and really showcase that so that you are ready and able to add to that when you join a board. So it's a combination of things that really help one to be on boards. Yeah, so it's you can't say it's one area. It's networking, it's getting into the right forums, it's being visible. Sometimes it's also even undertaking the formal training. For example, the IOD does training in terms of being a director, part 1 to part 3, joining organizations such as Women on Boards. I can't help myself. We're all about women sharing their journeys on boards, how they navigated difficult circumstances, how they should arrive and thrive in the boardroom, networking. So it's really a number of ways that one needs to get onto boards. And then the last bit is just, I think, to also understand the mechanistic way of what it entails to be on the board. So boards normally have governance processes behind the scenes. There's usually a board committee that looks at the skills. They analyze what skills are needed on the board. So one needs to also understand that setup so that you position yourself appropriately. And you can also approach a headhunter, for example. There are headhunters that specialize in placing board members. So one can proactively approach a headhunter and say, I have got this skill, I can offer this technical expertise, or this is my experience that I want to bring to a board. And then obviously you get opportunities presented and hopefully you get appointed.
Thanks, Judith. If I may just add there, one has to distinguish oneself from other people. That you are a CA, there are thousands of CAs out there. There must be something unique about you or additional to your qualification other than just being a CA, other than being just a doctor, other than being just a pharmacist, something else. Yeah. Tracy, we're bringing it home now, closer to home. What advice would you give to women within SAMED member companies who aspire to board roles but feel overlooked?
So the advice specifically to women is that see building a board capacity as you have to start with this, the center. So you have to start with the self. And if you don't see yourself ready, no one else will. That's the first thing. The second thing is navigating this confidence gap and the opportunities. So there's the opportunities are there and they're present, and often there's a gap between what is perceived from a confidence perspective. So I think that women need to then be intentional about stepping into spaces that perhaps there's an opportunity for, but you don't feel confident. And that's where the conversations around sponsorship, mentorship, men as allies become critical. Because women, let's start with this, if you don't back yourself, no one else will. If you don't stand up, you don't put your hand up, no one else will. And so you've got to do that for yourself. You've got to back yourself, and you've got to be present and find the people around you. The next thing is that you have to be intentional and make a difference. So you are not going to be on a board because you're female. And you're not going to, and if you are, you won't last there very long because you're female. So when I love the conversation just before this, and we all learn something new, even though we're showing up here as panelists, and that is that boards need specificity. So you need to be specific. You've got to specialize in something. You've got to add value. And I think the last thing I would say to any female who wants to be in a board, ask yourself why. Ask yourself why you want to be on the board. If you're just there because you want your name in lights, it's going to be for a fleeting moment. But if you're there because it's aligned with your purpose, it's aligned with what you want to, how you want to contribute to society, then build that capacity around that. To the people in the room that are already on boards and the leaders in the room, be intentional about your pipeline. Your board is going to be as strong as your pipeline. And your board is the heart and soul of a business. It's where your governance starts. It's where your strategic thinking is where you're setting and leading strategy. And so you want to have your strongest, your hardest hitters there. And so if that pipeline is strong, you're going to continuously feed a very, very strong board. So to women, put your hand up. Do not be afraid. That was, if I could tell myself something many, many years ago, it was that. Put your hand up.
Great. Thanks, Tracy. The one thing that I would like to add is the company that you keep is the company that can propel you. Because sometimes when you are in doubt, it's the people around you that see something in you that is of value, that can propel you to a higher level. So networking, not just networking for the sake of networking, choose carefully who you network with. and network as broadly as possible, because you don't know where the opportunity will come from. I go back to you, Delia. From your experience, and we've heard you've got vast experience in this area, what are the top 3 competencies or behaviors you look for when assessing board readiness?
Okay. So I think for me, we were talking earlier, both speakers, alluded to the fact that competency is important. I always encourage young people to say, don't be too hasty and go into boards prematurely, because being on the board is about advising a CEO effectively. I mean, the CEO is your one employee. So go deep, as Judith was saying, into your skills, perfect that art. Then at least be at an executive level, senior manager role where you've delivered results. So for me, when I advise women often, whether it's for boards or any role, is to say, show up authentically as yourself, because often as women, we are told we are either too tough or too weak because we are too nice. We are never just ourselves. So that's the first thing, as Tracy was saying, be confident, show up as hard as it may be, despite the fear, as yourself. And then and you define what that self is. But what's important is that you've got to demonstrate now that you've got the business credibility. You can deliver the results, right? You are able to talk strategy, because boards are not about operational matters. So it's a different kind of skill that's required now. You need to be able to tell whether a strategy is coherent. In other words, do the strategic choices inherently talk to each other? Does that make sense? You're able to stand back and see that. Is it congruent? Meaning, do you have the ability to scan the horizon and see emerging trends that you can share in the board, so that you can ask that question and say, please help me understand the assumptions you made to arrive at this conclusion around the strategy. It's not a gotcha moment. It's just to explore and ask very respectfully, driven by the values of the company. So I'm looking for people that are able to analyze strategy, synthesize it from a congruency, consistency, as well as coherence perspective. There's King 5 now. From a governance thinking perspective, I want to understand that this particular individual that tells me they want to be on a board can tell what stewardship is, tell it apart from oversight, apart from accountability, because that's the platform for all of that. King talks about strategy. That's the stewardship piece. They need to understand that that board, as it was said earlier, has to be grounded in purpose. Every decision we make is around values. So firstly, I want to understand, do they understand values? Are they grounded in values, and are their values compatible with that of the organization, so that they can help drive the organization forward from a stewardship perspective, from a strategy perspective? Even on the oversight side, it's important that they have learned what their fiduciary duty is, and duty of care, understand Section 76 of the Companies Act, very important. That's why they have to go, like I did the Canada Directors Institute course, just to, empower yourself with tools that you can bring into the boardroom. And then, of course, accountability. Accountability doesn't mean being rude to the executives and trying to catch them out. It's about equal measure, supporting them, and then at the same time, holding them accountable. And the board itself also has to account to the shareholders. Very important skill sets that I look for in that regard. I'll stop there. I could go on, but let me stop there.
Yeah. I know. We have the time constraints. Thanks, Delia. Judith, back to you. What are the common misconceptions professionals have about board roles?
So it's interesting. I mean, people actually joke that people think board members go to, get together, drink tea, have a good meal, have good wine, and then they leave. And yet it's quite a task. It's quite an important role to play. And I think just building on to what Delia was saying around what is required to be a good board member. I think the misconception is that, you just go there and bully management but what it is really directing the business and not meddling into the internal affairs of the organization, but really being that the focal point, first of all, of governance, making sure that things are being run ethically, that the business is being run responsibly, that you are operating legitimately, essentially arriving at the outcomes that the King Code speaks about. It's an ethical culture, so ethics is right there. So if you're not naturally an ethical person, I think a board role would be very difficult for you. Good performance. So if you're not performance driven, I think Delia spoke about it. Do you synthesize the strategy very well? Can you look ahead, 10 years ahead, and say, this, have we considered that? Can you ask the right questions to make sure that the company performs properly? Are you legitimate in terms of how you show up as a business? And this comes to talk around all the sustainability matters. Are you sustainable in how you're running your organization? What about the risks? So it's a very involving role that one needs to take very seriously. And if you think about where legislation is going with serious personal liabilities in terms of directors that are found wanting down the road. So the misconception that, it's a kind of an easy road, just go there and earn some fees. It's not what it is. In fact, there's a lot of personal sacrifice that one needs to put in, because the preparations for you to be so well prepared to make the right decisions, to check and challenge management effectively, requires you to put in quite a lot of time to prepare, because it entails not only reading widely, but being at the cutting edge of what's going on, being the trusted advisor to management in terms of what they should watch out for from a risk point of view, what the new trends are, et cetera, et cetera. So it's quite a daunting task from a time perspective, from a reputation perspective. I think when you're associated with the board, you're literally considered to be part of that organization, and the buck essentially stops with you. When things go wrong, everyone else can walk away, but the buck stops with the board. So it's a very serious role with serious responsibilities, and one needs to, I think, be very clear and deliberate about the role that they play, because it can actually bring lots of reward, but it also can bring a lot of harm if the wrong approach is taken to leading a board. So if you're really interested in running, being on a board, absolutely, very important role to play, but it does come with significant responsibilities. It comes with significant personal liability. And so one needs to be quite diligent in fulfilling your obligations on the board. I'll pause there, Chair.
Thanks, Judith. One of the things that I would point out is that sometimes people who are not on boards think that, like Judith was saying, that sometimes they think that you just sit there and earn fees. As a chair, the chair can see if somebody is not prepared, and people should know that. some of people make it so obvious that they are not prepared, that they ask questions about something that is in the board pack, and they ask questions on that. So you have to be prepared. Tracy, tell us, what unique value do women bring to medtech boardrooms that the sector may be under leveraging?
Sure, nice one.
Sorry, I have to ask that one.
So I think that it really goes down to the understanding of what diversity brings. And I think that for a long time, the conversation around diversity was around a fairness, or was equitable representation of the population. However, a fair amount of research has shown us that thriving and growing businesses have strong females in their leadership positions. And what happens is, having strong women means that your governances are stronger. So women are just better at enforcing the rules and creating those boundaries. Women are also excellent accelerators of innovation. So when you look at your R&D teams, if you look at our chemical engineering graduates that actually leave universities in South Africa, I think the last time I checked the number, we were 70% of chemical engineer graduates were females. So by getting by getting diversity into these spaces, you're accelerating innovation, you're accelerating your governance, you're bringing diversity in a very meaningful way, and just having a different thinking in the room means that people are able to challenge each other. We're able to think differently. We know again from research that women have an incredible ability to balance things. So we're able to focus on many things at the same time and giving, to some extent, attention to many things. So I don't think it's ever a matter of should we have women or men. I think it's always a conversation that we should have an equitable representation of both, because both people bring very fundamental qualities into the workspaces and into leadership.
Thanks, Tracy. Nomti, I'm aware of the time. We have 20 minutes, but there are so many questions that I want to ask. Please just alert me if we are running close to running out of time.
You are good for time. Go for it.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much. My next question now, Delia, I always start with you. From your vantage point as a board chair, you did mention that you've chaired before and you are still chairing. What distinguishes a board member who adds real value from one who simply occupies a seat?
Chef, if you'll allow me, I really loved what Tracy had to say.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that, in a sector like yours, in the medtech sector, for me, where innovation and patient outcomes intersect, it is so important to have diverse leadership. And she's so right. One of my favorite TED Talks is with Margaret Hefner, who references a study done by Malone from the MIT Intelligence Center, talking about, they were looking at why do certain teams perform better. And what they found was actually it's not what they were looking for. They thought there was a correlation between high IQ and performance. And in fact, what they found was empathy, which we have loads of as women, and social connectedness, that ability to welcome people, like how you make me feel welcome, Chair, at the PPS board. Yes, an equal performance, no free riders in the board. So in that particular team. So I think boards are teams. So I absolutely endorse what Tracy is saying. And then guess what? They also found that the majority of the people in the teams that were performing well were women. No offense to the men. It was just research. It is evidence-based. So you were asking me, what do I expect as chair? So firstly, I think people need to understand, as Judith was saying, that this is no joke. There are liabilities here. So one has to understand that we are governed by the Companies Act. So in other words, you are there to discharge your fiduciary duty and duty of care, right? Yes, you can be protected by certain sections, in terms of how you arrived at your decision, like the business judgment rule that protects you. Even if you come to the wrong decision, the business judgment rule says, yes, we got experts in, there was a process followed, everything was documented. But that for me is the heart of why we are in that board. You are there to act in good faith and in the best interest of that company, not of the shareholders, not of the founders of that company, of all stakeholders, in the best interest of the company. So that means, going back to my issue around an obsession around asking good questions. For me, a good board member asks good questions that make the thinking evolve. And people often ask me, but how do you ask those questions? Ask exploratory questions, things like, have you thought about X, Y, and Z? Help me understand X, Y, and Z. How did we arrive? What are your assumptions? I've said this before. So sometimes you have to ask inconvenient questions in a respectful way. It's necessary if you are on a board. It's how you come across. I'm not meaning that you have to be that member that always is fighting and always is confrontational. It's possible to ask an inconvenient question without fighting with anyone. And I think independence of mind is very important. At Women on Boards, there was a fireside chat where a woman told us, who sits on many, many boards, and she said she was the only lone voice when remuneration of the executive was discussed, and she was the one that said, I don't agree. And please, can you note that and put it in the minutes that I was the only one standing alone on that matter. They got to the AGM and that remuneration was rejected by the shareholders. Everyone looked at her like, how did you know? So even if it's uncomfortable, it's important to just go with your gut, what your gut is telling you. Often, when I was still starting out in my board career, I would hold back and think a thought to myself. And then some other person says it in the room and I was thinking the exact same thing. Why didn't I just voice it out? So independence of mind, very, very important. And I was talking about that inconvenience and being comfortable with being the only one. I remember I was chairing a session and we were about to discuss the CEO's package and how they've been disadvantaged in the past. And I said, I think you need to recuse yourself. And they looked at me like, who do you think you are? I'm not going to recuse myself. I said, well, then you are in breach of the Companies Act because you've got a financial interest in what we're about to discuss. And then all board members, fortunately, I had allies and the CEO recused themselves. But it is the ability to do those kinds of things. And then, as we said earlier, intellectual curiosity is of paramount importance. Come into the board prepared, of course, but look at what's happening. We are dealing with very complex geopolitics and a lot of uncertainty. So it's important to be reading the whole time and then bring that into the boardroom to help, because the board is there to make good decisions for the company. So to make sure that those decisions are robust, rigorous, bring in fresh information, read widely, and help the quality of those decisions. And that's why, let me conclude by saying, that's why Tracy is right to say cognitive and demographic diversity is of paramount importance. Otherwise, we are running a risk. If we don't have more women, it means less innovation. It means less good quality decisions. I'll stop there, Chair.
Thanks, Delia. Just to mention that if you think you're going to just sit and occupy that seat on the board and not say anything, remember any board decision is your decision as well. You can't say, I didn't agree with that, I didn't say that. It doesn't work that way. It's the same as people saying, I'm not going to vote, forgetting that whether you vote or you don't vote, that government will rule over you in any way. So rather you say something that is constructive. Judith.
Yes.
How can women ensure they are building governance literacy, not just operational excellence?
I think that's a straightforward question. So don't be illiterate, right? Don't be illiterate. Educate yourself. I think I alluded to it earlier. We're so privileged to live in an era where information is at your fingertips. So obviously, don't be a jack of all trades. Specialize in an area. Hone into it, because that's what's going to create that difference that you bring on a board. So yeah, literacy around governance, it's available. There is formalized ways of getting that training. There's informal ways. In fact, the informal ways, in my experience, are the most effective, because you literally learn the lessons, what to do and what not to do. And don't limit it to, just your sphere of influence or area of comfort. I think we need to normalize coming out of your comfort zone. I remember when we had our Power Day last year at one of our women on boards, the lady was presenting, said the problem that a lot of us do have is that we associate ourselves only with like-minded people like ourselves. Even when you find a coach, you want a coach who's going to just talk about things that you like. We need to actually try and get out of the comfort zone and get somebody to challenge us to think differently. And hopefully then you can become more literate around different perspectives, how people synthesize information and arrive at decisions. In fact, I follow Yuval Noah Harari quite closely. And his whole idea around where humans find themselves is the stories that we tell ourselves. If you look at even what's happening, geopolitically, the Americans think about something this way, the British think about something that way, people in the South, et cetera, et cetera. So one needs to, I think, broaden their knowledge and understand, so that when you arrive in a boardroom and try and make sense of the world, for example, you have got a good understanding of what's informing some of those big shifts and trends that are happening around the world. And those principles apply geopolitically, globally, regionally, locally, up to your real where you are in the industry. So I think literacy is quite a broad matter, Chair, and one needs to be quite deliberate, but also quite specific in that you create expertise in a special area that you're interested in, so that you can become an authority that one can consult with and that you can then offer onto a board. So I think that's my take. It was quite a broad question about literacy. Yeah. That's how I would interpret that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think you've summarized it well for us to understand. Tracy, tell us.
Yes, Chair.
Tell us, what surprised you most about your first board appointment?
I think the thing that surprised me the most is how I thought I was prepared in my head. and I got there and I could not speak. And it's this balance between I want this, and you get there and you're prepared intellectually, you're not prepared from a confidence perspective, and you're not prepared to be courageous in the conversations. So so I think that surprised me, because I thought I was going to go in and I was going to say these gems, and everyone's going to go, oh wow, Tracy, you're so smart. And I realized that I wasn't saying anything. And I think earlier, I don't know if it's Delia said something, you would think this great thought and you would wait, and then somebody else says it, and then you really want to give yourself a tap over the hand and say, why didn't you say it? You had that thought. So it's this knowing it's in your head, having the confidence to speak. And I think that comes over time. And I think that's built by holding all of those spaces before that. Do the jobs that come before getting onto the board. Learn the process, understand the risks of the business, understand the governance landscape, understand what your job is there. That the one thing was learning how to speak. The second thing was asking explicitly, what is the role that I need to play? So make that explicit, so that I understood that when I was showing up, what was I showing up to do? So I think that was my biggest learning. And over time, I learned that being better prepared helps me to be more confident in my communication and courageous in my questioning, so that I could add value in the space that I was in.
Thanks, Tracy. Nomti, I think we need to open to the floor, even if it's a virtual floor. Are there any questions on the chat?
Yes, there are. Tanya's posed a question or comment as well. Oh, there we go. Tanya, your hand's up. Go ahead.
I'm just going to ask people, please, to summarize. We have limited time now. Summarize your question and summarize your response, please, if you are responding.
Okay. I thought we have another half an hour, but my timing could be wrong.
Yes, we do.
We do.
Okay, great. Okay. Sybil, I just wanted to chat about some of the sort of housekeeping around boards, because I think how boards also function administratively is as important as having the skills and the experience and the expertise. And if you don't have those administrative functions in place, that can actually be counterproductive. So I'm thinking about virtual meetings, for example. What good have they done and not good? And what are some of the lessons and tips that maybe you ladies would have for people who are attending and are board members in virtual board meetings? I've experienced instances where some board members are just in and out of meetings, doing other things. So that's a question. I would love to know also from you, Sybil, you were a board member of SAMED way back when, in the very early days. And now you're a board member again. What differences are you seeing, and what advice would you give to potentially future SAMED lady board members, should they be nominated and elected? And lovely to see you, Delia and Judith. Thank you for joining us.
Sure. If I can just speak about my journey with SAMED. Look, the first time I was a board member of SAMED, I was brought in by my employer to represent them. I was voted in, by the way, but and I was not as prepared as I would be today, and I was not as informed as I would be today. Sometimes at that time, employers used to just second people. I wouldn't say in areas where, areas where there isn't that much focus about for the company. So that's where I was. The main thing though is that when I was there on the board, this was early 90s. I mean, just after 1994. So I was the only Black person, if I can recall. And there were only 2 women on that board. Black and white, which was nice, and we used to scanner the 2 of us about things, which was also very helpful to have somebody that you can talk to and chat, and also just get the historical perspective of the institution. The office was not as staffed as we have now. I think we had an administrator and maybe a receptionist. And we were renting offices somewhere in Pretoria. Well, the showgrounds, which are sort of not existent at the moment. But now, Summit has evolved to this governance-driven institution that operates at a level where any company would operate. Very much engaging its members, and very busy with involving members. If they almost every month there's something, 1 or more events on Summit, whether it's a board meeting or it's a forum for this, and fighting for members. So those, Tanya, that's what has changed for me. The second time around, it's like the first time. It's like it's first time on the board. I'm learning things that I hadn't learned before. So it does help to be back and just to compare from where I come from. I'm not sure if I've answered your question, Tanya, and I think I've taken too long. Is there any other question, Nomti?
Yes,
Chair?
Yes, Delia?
Tanya asked, the virtual meetings. I
Oh,
just wanted
yes.
to touch on that. And I think Judith is a pro at this. But I'll just give my take from a point of view of, I think, with COVID, virtual is an equalizer. So if you were shy, for example, you can put your question in the chat. And there's nowhere to hide and so on. But I have to say my own pet peeve is people not showing their faces, the board members not showing their faces. I love that. But in government, at the ECIC, that's not how it works. But I come from an environment at Deloitte where you all had to, as leaders, show your faces. But I just feel like it robs us. The virtual robs us of the dynamic and reading the room, the energy in the room. So it's got pluses and minuses, but maybe Judith has, because she does this for a living, she will have a better response. Thanks for indulging us, Chair.
No, I'm not indulging you. We need to address that shortly. Just a short response from you, Judith, before I move to Mariana.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I think from a cost perspective and obviously logistics, if you're aiming to minimize costs on travel and all of that, convenience, and also with the use of AI, because when you have meetings online and you've got AI tools, it has a recording and you can use the recording to write minutes, synthesize actions, etc. So those are the advantages for virtual meetings. On the inverse of it, obviously, you can't read the language as what the body language. It's very difficult to interact. And I think sometimes you actually need to feed off each other in terms of the energy around the room. And having said that, I think the chairman also plays a very critical role in making sure that the in-person format and the virtual format works well. So the in-person can be a little bit overwhelming because I think sometimes everyone has got something to say, and it can be, but the chairman can also act quite decisively on how they manage that. Same thing for virtual, because the chairman can also draw in people and ask people to be more visible, participate more, seek clarity and questions from the meeting. So I think it's really about balancing it. And if you happen to be in a role like myself where you running these meetings, you have to be deliberate about how the meetings are run. Sometimes it's about having a conversation with the chairman to encourage them to cultivate certain behaviors, and also having rules around what happens if it's a virtual meeting. For example, not having a camera on is problematic because how do you know that people are engaged? So it's those kinds of, admin things that one needs to work around, but you have to be quite deliberate and specific and get the buy-in from the people in the room, be it physical and virtual, to see why certain things are being done in a particular way, because then people can understand. For example, if you've got a very busy meeting schedule and people have to fly around from different locations, it makes sense to actually have virtual meetings, because then people can, you can run through the meetings quite easily without problems. So it's a mix. And I think there's no real answer. The answer lies in how you organize the meetings, how you communicate why certain things need to be done like that, and how you implement the rules of engagement around those two formats.
Mariana, you had your hand up. Is it down now? Have you been covered?
No, I was waiting for you to call me online to speak. Thank you for incredible session. I really enjoyed all the speakers. My question is to you, Dr. Sobi, to just want to find out if there are any opportunities to shadow some of women that are already on the boards. Like to Judith's point, some of us have done a lot of formal training, the companies act back and forth, but it's a different ball game, I guess, when you get into the real world, like Tracy's point to say you can be intellectually prepared, but it is the real life experience that will, sort of assure you that this is something that you can handle. So I just wanted to check from Summit's perspective, we've got job shadowing or mentorship programs that are formalized for people who are interested could apply. And also if there are any positions available, how do you advertise them so that they are visible to some aspiring board members? Thank you.
Wow. On the Summit side, the shadowing part, maybe Tanya will be the person that speaks to that, but how you get onto the board on Summit is that your employer the membership is through the employer, not you. So it's the company that is a member, and those companies are their representatives are the ones who vote people onto the board. Just starting up, even if you're not shadowing, look for social organizations, not big companies, not paying companies. Start with the church, start with your professional association, and if you have one, and learn from there. My journey was starting with professional association, and I must tell you that in my journey, both men and women, and at that time, because my profession at that time was majority white people, most of the people that shepherded me and promoted me and guided me were men and women, white men and women. So those are the people. I said earlier on that you need to have a network of people that will shepherd you and support you and encourage you. And people will see what you are capable of because of what you do in those small places. You don't have to be in a big company just from the word go. There are people who aspire to be board members of listed companies. I'm not so sure that I'm even aspire to get there. I think there's lots of honor. It's very onerous, but where I am is where I am satisfied to be. So I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but Tanya, I think, is going to help me with the rest of your question. Tanya?
Sensible. And sorry, everyone, I'm talking through my phone because my laptop sound isn't working. Mariana, it's a great idea. It's not something that we have in place at this point in time. And I think we were talking about how women are proponents of innovation. So you've come up with an innovative idea. And I think we will take this back. Tracy, probably your committee is the best committee to put this on the agenda, our Diversity and Inclusion Committee. And what can we do as SAMED and as the SAMED board to maybe mentor and allow those who are interested in becoming a member of the SAMED board to have that experience? But I do want to mention an initiative which Delia and Sybil are involved in, which is called Women on Boards. And the Women on Boards initiative holds regular fireside chats, amazing opportunities for women who want to be on boards to learn, to understand, to share experiences, be it virtual, even around the table. And SAMED has been advertising some of those events. We are going to be more closely aligning ourselves with Women on Boards, seeing how we can support that initiative, but also share those events more regularly with the members. So that's one way as well, Mariana. But please, if you're not on the Diversity and Inclusion SAMED WhatsApp group, please reach out to Nomti, but we also do share those events via our LinkedIn as well.
Okay. The other opportunity maybe within your company is what Judith said earlier on, honing on some expertise and be a specialist in a certain thing. Because once you're there at a certain level, you are invited to attend board meetings at the chairman's invitation. And if you are invited at that level, you are sitting there and you are allowed to talk. Chairman will give you permission to talk. It's just that you can't be part of the decision making. So also there in your own company, look for opportunities that can come in. I see your hand, Delia. Nomti, you had one. Let's take one question from the floor, and then Delia, unless you want to speak to this point in particular.
I have
It's
a few.
to this one.
Okay,
Okay.
Very quickly, Chair, and I know I'm breaking the rules. I wasn't supposed to raise my hand. I just wanted to give Judith her flowers. Women on Boards is her brainchild.
Yes.
So kudos to her for starting it. And then just to say that at the Women on Boards, we often invite hunters that can connect people with boards. And our intention at some point is to formalize the arrangement so that we can then put people on boards. And what a pity Mariana is raising this question. Now we are in the process of constituting a board for Women on Boards, but there will be opportunities for people to be in the work streams that support that board. So that's a good start, I would say. So Mariana, come join us at our event. Thank you for that advert moment. Thank you.
Thanks, Delia. Nomti, who's next?
Awesome. So I'll just read a couple of questions and comments, and then as and when needed, the answers will then be shared. So Irene has said, thank you all for the authenticity behind what you're sharing. This adds value and is very helpful and refreshing. Alicia says, how do you get around ego? Often we have a seat at the table, but our plates are empty. Cute. And then we've got Shanti says, thank you for the most inspiring discussion this morning. Then Fundi says, inspiring insight, ladies. Thank you for the empowering engagements. I like the concept of standing firm to your conviction, even if you are a minority. So And then there was one that also came in. We often speak about developing the next generation of women leaders, yet many board seats remain occupied for decades. At what point does continuity become gatekeeping? And how can boards intentionally create room for new talent without waiting for someone to step down? And yeah, I'll pause there and then we will go in. We've got a couple of more that have come through as well.
Yeah, maybe I will start with that one, but Delia, any panelist can respond to that. And I'll use the experience of where I am now. I do sit on the nominations committee of this entity, and there is a process. The nominations committee is responsible for ensuring that there is succession, proper succession planning, both at board levels, at committee levels. So it's their responsibility. So when you look for candidates to come onto the board, you're already looking ahead as to who is coming down, retiring or not retiring. And then also the possibilities that whoever is on your board may not be re-elected by the members at the AGM. So if that happens, who is going to occupy that space? People talk about being on the board for a long time. Some companies, even if you are a seasoned board member, if you are in an industry that is not your industry, it takes time to understand the nitty-gritties of the industry, let alone of the company that you are a board member for. So you can easily, let me speak for myself, for instance. I am a pharmacist by profession, but I'm in an insurance business. The only thing that I know about insurance is that it's a garage purchase. That's all that I knew before. But also this insurance company that I'm with insist on training. We have to report every year what training, reading, or whatever we have done for that year. But to understand the operations of the company and the industry, you can't do it in less than 3 years. And our initial period is 3 years appointment. And by that time, you're just starting to understand the nitty-gritties of the industry and the company. But of course, if you are already in the insurance business, that is fine. You have embedded knowledge and it's easier for you. So the time on the board, it's not that some people are just sitting, not always the case that people are just sitting on boards. Remember that if you are sitting on board, there's also the issue of your independence, and that has to be assessed. Once you reach a certain period, you have to be assessed whether you are still independent. And how are you assessed to be independent? You look at potential conflicts of interest. The chairman is watching your contributions. Chairman and fellow board members are watching your contributions. If there's a topic that the board is discussing, and all of a sudden you are sort of protective of the decision. You don't want a decision going this way, but maybe favoring whatever you're thinking, then something is suspicious about your independence. So it's very important that you keep your independence. Delia?
Chair, if I may, I loved everything you said. Absolutely. It was so wise. Recently we were being at the government export credit insurance company. I can say this because the information is publicly available. Our regulator is the Prudential Authority. There are two members, very smart. One is CA, one an actuary, who have been on the board for 12 years. I've just joined. I joined last year in July. I love them. Their contributions are absolutely amazing. They've got the institutional memory, whatever. The Prudential Authority was saying, 12 years is too long. How do you vouch for their independence? And I pushed back and I resisted through my choice and whatever. But when I thought about it and I started seeing what you were talking about, Chair, that they was now suddenly starting to behave like management. They were always protecting management, not wanting to hear the views of others because they know the business so much. The rest of us, we were being told, we've just arrived, nothing, listen to us, management is right. And then I started to see that actually the regulator is right. The Prudential Authority is right to question the longevity of tenure of these two individuals. So it's something I'm grappling with. So it's a very, very important one, this lengthy, and I think board member, a headhunter recently told me that boards are now starting to also say retirement age has to absolutely be at 70, just to throw that in, that once you've reached 70, you've reached your sell-by date. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Tanya, I hope you heard that. And Tracy's 70 and I'm 70.
No, sorry, that's so career limiting. I shouldn't have said that.
No, it's not a problem. Nomti, any other questions?
We just have some comments. Scott, our chairperson, has said to all the incredible women in Medtech, Medtech needs your curiosity, your leadership, and your courage to challenge the status quo. Keep asking the bold questions and keep lifting one another as you rise. The future of healthcare is stronger, smarter, and more robust because of your involvement. Thank you all for your valued contributions.
Thanks. I have one question that I need my panelists now to answer as we prepare to close. We still have time, but if we have more questions, we are open to have those questions. But I do want my panelists to address this question. You've had so much experience. You've seen it. I won't say you've seen it all, but you've seen most of it. Right. If you are advising your younger self at the beginning of your leadership journey, knowing what you know now about governance and influence, what would you say? Instead of, I'm going to reverse my order now, I'm just going to start in at the back, Tracy. I'm starting with you. Okay, I'll mini more. Tracy, you can start.
All right, there we go. So I think the first thing I would say to anyone is make sure you understand the rules of the game that you're going to play. So often you're faced with bullies in the, we talk the nice stories here and it's great, but the reality of it is there are bullies. There are people that show up with massive egos. So understand the rules. Understand your competencies and the things that you can talk to, and make yourself an expert in the things that matter. I think that when egos start to come to the front, my advice to myself then would have been use the governances and the rules that are already in place. Businesses, workplaces, boards, they have governances that are built in. Often we don't draw on them. Often we don't bring the rules to the front and we say, there's a rule around this, and can we just follow the rules? And that's what I would say. But in order to do that, you have to know the rules. So that's what I would say to myself. And then I think empathy is such an important thing that I should have been more generous with myself then, both for myself and the people around me. You see, everyone shows up with their context. And often what you hear is not necessarily, it's coming from either a place of fear, a place of uncertainty. And I think if we show up in these spaces with some empathy, we'll really accelerate all the things that we could do.
Thanks, Tracy. Judith, what would you tell a 25-year-old or 35-year-old Judith? Not that you are maybe, probably you are 1 year younger than 35.
Oh, please, Chair, you're so complimentary. So I think for me, I would say to myself to fight to remain anchored in the values, because I've seen things go wrong, and these things went wrong because the values were compromised. So I think that, to me, it's like it's an ongoing journey, Che. It's you never arrive at that. It's really around, how do I continue to get tools to remain anchored in the value system so that I can end up in the right outcomes? Because I think board work, what matters is what changes. So it's the so what question. You know, I think we've all spoken about the governance, the quality of decisions, but what matters is what actually changes after the boards have met and they've discussed and they've decided. And I think when you're anchored in values, the right values, the things around stewardship, for example, it's a no-brainer. The things around sustainability or living a lasting legacy, it's a no-brainer. So to me, I still want to, I think, keep anchored in the right values and stick to it and keep learning to keep anchored in those. So that would be my take on that.
Thanks, Judith. Delia?
Okay, so to my younger self, I would say, firstly, courage in the boardroom is not about being the loudest voice. It's about asking the right questions to protect the organization. And then also, because of the mistakes I've made in my early journey as a governance person, is that when I moved from being an executive, the head of tax and legal at Deloitte, to move towards being the board chair, I didn't have a cooling off period. So I thought the leadership styles are the same. Get in there, solve the problem, move from problem to problem, and you are the one with the answers and whatever. I learned very quickly that I have to listen and speak last, especially as chair. So I made mistakes. So I would warn my younger self to say, listen consciously. Then lastly, I would say, don't wait to be perfect. Being on the board is not about perfection. As long as you show up with your business credibility, having delivered results in your area of expertise, and also having context, understanding the industry that your company operates in, understanding that company itself, having studied about it. Then lastly, just, have a coach, learn a lot about emotional intelligence. There are two schools of thought. There are some who say you can't teach emotional intelligence. I think it's possible to learn emotional intelligence, the impact you have on others, and also being collaborative. So yeah, I would leave it there, Chair. Those are the words I would give my younger self. Thank you.
Thanks, Delia. Nomti, have we exhausted all the questions in the chat or Q&A?
Yeah, most of them are quite just affirmative comments. Molo says, congratulations to the panel on an exceptionally insightful Women on Board session. Your guidance was truly empowering, and we would welcome another mentorship initiatives to continue learning from your experience. And we also do have some of the SAMED board also on the call as well, if there's any questions or comments you want to pose to them.
Well, I don't see anything, and I got a reminder there that I had 5 minutes. Now I have 4 minutes. I'm very strict about time, and it's been a long time. People have taken time from their busy schedule, so we have to respect that. So I'm going to bring this to a close. I remember we said women on boards. We're talking access, we're talking voice, and we're talking influence. So as we close, I want to start by thanking my panelists for their honesty, generosity, and willingness to share not just success stories, but real experiences. And thank you to everyone who joined and engaged so thoughtfully. Your presence matters. If there is one message to carry forward from today, it is this. The challenge is not a lack of capable women. The challenge is how opportunity, voice, and sponsorship are shared. To the women listening today, you do not need to wait until you feel perfectly ready. Boards don't need perfection. They need judgment, they need perspective, and the courage to speak when it matters. Finding your voice is not about being louder. It's about trusting that your contribution adds value. And to the men in the room, hey, what would we do without our men? Especially those who chair boards or influence appointments. Progress happens when support becomes intentional sponsorship, when merit is defined broadly, and when new voices are actively invited into the room. So here's the challenge as you leave today. If you aspire to a board role, take one visible step forward. If you sit on a board, use your voice earlier and make space for others. Because if you just sit, know that you are closing space for another woman going forward. People will be saying, we brought a woman in and what did we get for it? And if you open doors, open at least one wider than before. Let me leave you with this thought. Leadership is not about having a seat at the table. It's about using your seat to make the table better. Thank you, and let's turn today's conversation into action. Thank you all. Namti, I think we've reached the end of our session.
Thank you.
And leave it to you to close the session if you want to.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all our speakers. Thank you to all our attendees and all the questions that were posed. May you have a good balance of the day. See you at the next forum. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.